Gamebreaker TV.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 12 of Monty's Minute for December 4th, 2012. I'm Gary Gannon. You're watching Gamebreaker TV, and of course, joining me as always, managing director of Mass Digi, it's Mr. Monty Sharma. Hello, sir.
Hey, Gary. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Where are you? You are on location. Where are you?
I am on location today. It's kind of neat. So behind me, you're seeing live feed from, or at least live when we recorded this, live feed from Roadhouse Interactive in Vancouver. And these are the guys who are responsible for Family Guy Online, MechWarrior Tactics. So, you know, the group directly behind me just pushed live a new MechWarrior beta. A lot of cheering just a few minutes ago. And they've got teams working on some social and mobile games, and a technology group. So it's kind of neat to be in the heart of it all.
Calling in from the trenches, Mr. Monty Sharma. See, now everybody knows he's completely legit, that you are. All right, so let's jump into some questions here. So first up from Nick Mudry. He says, hey, Monty, I just recently launched a small independent game development team with a few students here on campus, and I'm wondering what we should know as a recently founded business/company. He says, we are hard at work currently on our second game project and would like to know how we could build and maintain a fan base at a time where we cannot say much about the project. Also, any additional tips that you have would be great. Thanks. Keep up the great work. Love the show. Nick. Thanks for watching, Nick. So what kind of advice do you have up-and-comers?
Yeah, so, you know, I should say that I know Nick. He's a student at Becker College. He is one of the new generation of game developers who have kind of been trying to do a lot of this stuff since they were in high school. So it's really kind of neat to see the energy, the intelligence, the experience that they manifest even early in their college experience. So, you know, in terms of maintaining fan interest and building that community, Nick, there's this whole thing about communicating constantly, even if you're not giving away the heart of what you're doing. And so it's, you know, you go through this very careful reveal of, hey, we're working on something like this, we get some interest, we tell you a little more, we tell you a little more, and over time you're trying to build the interest while still holding some key things back, so that you actually have people, you know, really excited by the time you go to launch and beta. So it's really trying to build up that crescendo. And so, you know, you see the hype cycle for games, but that's really what it is, you know, a little drib here, a little drab, a little more, and then, hey, look, it's fabulous.
And they should be thinking about this and kind of doing some sort of like internal mapping out marketing at this point. And there's probably a lot of little things you can do. I think I'll add my 2 cents, and especially like socially is, you know, maybe you can come up with even some sort of like, you know, social interaction with giveaways and sort of some sort of content, things to kind of start building your, you know, your business Twitter account and your Facebook page. Like you want to start getting those done early. Like you really want to start building up a mass of people that you're not scrambling when you're about to launch the game and go like, now how do we find people? You have to start now.
Yeah, and you know, I think that the point you make there that's essential is a lot of student teams think it's all about the game design, the art, the programming, and yeah, that's your game, but in reality, if you don't have your marketing nailed, if you don't have your presence, you don't have a business model put together, you could build the best game in the world and you're still going to go broke. So it's put those pieces together.
And with independents like this, you know, they don't have much money, so they really don't have dollars to throw at it. You know, the big companies can throw like, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars to communicate with people, to get the word out to them, so they know that you exist. It's not very easy. I mean, it's something Gamebreaker does. I mean, we don't spend $1 on advertising here. This has all been grassroots, but it has taken a long time. It's been years of building and building. So I say figure it out and start now. Figure out what you can say and what you're comfortable with and get a plan, because you need to get on the social train quick so you can turn that faucet and open it up.
You got it.
So let's see. Next up from Jeremy Keat. He started. Wow, there's a long one. He's got a synopsis. He says the funding for major game costs, hundreds of millions of dollars, even to build and maintain service. Some companies buckle, like recently the 38 Studios debacle and the seemingly overinvestment of Star Wars: The Old Republic. I Am Alive or the huge delays releasing The Secret World are just a few examples. It says, we all know AI is very complex and tedious as a task for programming in video games, which translates to cost. Network and database efficiency is important for the game servers and has a lot to do with efficient coding. So now here's his question. Do you think it would be better for the industry factoring the risks to start sharing or developing resources mainly in programming, coding, development tools, and database structuring, particularly their AI, so that all developers can benefit from cheaper future development in their titles while allowing more advanced games to be made in the same time or quicker?
Yeah, and that's actually an awesome question. And something I know quite a lot about is what in the game business is called the middleware part of it. So, you can't just trade game code. The problem is when you write software for a particular game, you write it for that game. And you don't spend the extra time to make it flexible or to make it well documented for somebody who isn't a member of your programming team. So what happens is companies come together. So Vivox was one such company. There's a bunch of others. So there's a group here working with the Roadhouse team called Overdriver, who are working on a back-end system for mobile games. And so, from what I've seen them do, you can take something that would be, a programmer and an ops guy spending a couple of months into a week-long exercise for one programmer. That's awesome. So that really cuts down the cost. So, the debate you have in the industry is around, we can customize and we can build this exactly to our needs for, X dollars. Now, we can buy off-the-shelf middleware for 60% of that price or 50% of that price, except it's not going to be exactly like we wrote it ourselves. And for a while when 6-7 years ago, it was really hard selling middleware in the game industry because the engineers and everybody had lots of money and they said no, we want it exactly like this. And so we would, as we landed customers, we do a ton of work customizing it for them and getting it so it was exactly what they wanted. And when I talk to developers now and, they say, look, if we want to pull this off, we got to use third-party tools and we have to use them exactly as they've built them rather than customizing and use really good game design and art assets to make our game unique, and it's not that we coded some special feature. So, I see us transitioning as an industry to more middleware, more core technology. It's one of the things Roadhouse believes in is, hey, how do we use common technology across all of the games that we build? And, they're putting a lot of effort into that so that they can do that, but that means every time they build the technology, they have to be a little more careful, spend a little bit of time making sure that it is reusable code.
You think a lot of companies actually get themselves in trouble here and they try and take that and try and customize it out so much the user experience actually suffers in the end? Absolutely.
And this is true for, every company in every industry. I had a friend who's an engineer who likes to say, I love software because everything's possible. You say you want to do that? Okay, that's fine. It's just time and money. How much money do you want to spend making the feature do that? And when you sit around with people, you get into these ridiculous scoping exercises where people are spitting out idea after idea on things they want. And okay, that's nice. That's interesting. Is that the core gameplay? Is that what makes that game really interesting? Probably not. And so if you can shave time and money by using third-party tools, you're going to end up with, the same core fun, faster and cheaper, and that gives you a chance to build another game.
All right, next up, this one from Nick. He says, "Hi, Monty and Gary. I know you've discussed the concept of free-to-play versus pay-to-play before, but what really makes a free-to-play game work is its revenue-generating pieces. So I was wondering this specifically. How much modeling does a company do when deciding microtransaction pricing?"
Yeah, so a good company, and actually I've seen some of the models here, it's insane.
Really?
The spreadsheet is incredible in terms of the amount of depth, because not only are you looking at what are we pricing things at, but what's the team that's building it? How are we going to maintain it? How often are we doing content pushes? What's it cost to make it? And then how does that pay off over time? So there's an ROI on this development thing. And every time a company does it, they learn a whole lot, they refine their model, and the model gets more and more complex. The model here is enough to scare, most bond traders. It's wild, but what it does is it gets much closer to reality as to what's going to happen, because they've been able to capture and model it so tightly. And I think that's a huge, that's an asset that a company has. And that's an important part for anybody who's in the business to understand it.
And I think you're seeing a lot of more companies even hire on, financial analysts and people from from Wall Street. Even I think Guild Wars 2 had a specific person in that seat, where they're not even from necessarily the game world at all. They're literally from the real world financial analysts coming into the mix. So they're paying much attention to this. Nick has a follow-up question here. He says, "I'm a finance guy. I have an MBA specializing in pricing strategy." He says, "I hear a lot about how to get into the industry as a developer. What about how one might break into the industry on the business end? Cheers from the dark depths of Excel."
Yeah, so the opportunity there, and I think a lot of the pricing strategy stuff, and also the analytics side of it. So we're seeing more college programs around game analytics. It's certainly something an MBA can turn their mind to. Is how am I going to be able to take what's happening in the game, convert that to how we optimize the offers? If we give away free in soft currency, so in-game currency that you get by playing the game, what's that do to purchases? And if people are purchasing more things, how's that impacting behavior? One thing that folks need to realize is every game's player base is slightly different, and as you get that different player base, their behavior is different. So, as an MBA graduate, I think going and pitching yourself to game companies is absolutely an opportunity. There's both roles in production and business management, project management, analysis, all of that. So it's an element of showing that, hey, I really understand games. I'm really keen about games. I'm excited. I'm willing to put in the time and the effort to become, the expert inside of the company to do it, and then building up from there.
All right, next up, this one from John Burford. Says, "Hey, Monty, I'm an aspiring game developer in school for my BS in computer science. Thanks to Unity and similar tools, we've recently seen a huge influx of people like myself trying to get into the field. Are we nearing the point of saturation?" What are you saying? You're in touch with a lot of the students there. Are you just overwhelmed?
Actually, everything here is done in Unity. Everything. There's an interesting thing that's happening, right? So we have a professionalization of the industry that's going on, and this happens in every industry. Like when I was, so I went to college in '83. So back when I went to school, computer science people who were lead coders and that, a lot of times they were physicists, they were mathematicians, they were, whatever. They were just bright guys who learned how to use computers. And anybody who was smart, you just hire them, they do it. Well, you look at it now, and I talk to a VP of engineering or a tech director about, hey, there's this guy, that guy, and they go, you know what, we really like to hire people who are traditionally trained as computer scientists because they've got sort of a depth and a formality of education that makes things easier. So we have ways that we've figured out are good. Game development is actually going through that process now. So, 5-6 years ago, you couldn't get a degree in game design. And so everyone in the industry, like, I'm willing to bet 99% of the people here, and there's, I think 70, 80 people in the room with me, don't have a degree in game design. Some of them don't have degrees. Some of them were Olympic skiers who have a creative touch, college dropouts, people who were English majors. Hell, I've got a history degree. All of these sorts of people. So we're in the industry, but we're going to be the breed that over the next 20, 30 years dies out, and it's replaced by these professional college students. Now, let's talk about saturation. Yep, there's a whole lot of people who are getting into game design. Things like Unity make it easier to produce a game. But, I sort of take you back to 1994. Anybody who could spell HTML was a web designer. Well, by 1995, that number was cut by 80%, and by 96, there was maybe 1% of those people alive, and now it's probably like 0.5%. So every time you go through a technological change, you see it. And what's happening right now with Unity is, hey, I can build a really solid 3D game with all sorts of functionality easily, quickly, cheaply, and I've got distribution models through Steam, through mobiles, all of that give me all sorts of different opportunities. So, hey, that's going to lead to an explosion. But what inevitably happens is the effort around marketing, around publishing it, maintaining it, the quality goes up. 2-3 years ago, people used to talk about, oh yeah, to build a social game, you need 6 weeks and $50,000. Not anymore. To build a decent mid-core game, if you don't have a budget of $3 to $4 million, you're not going to produce anything particularly, smashing. And even then, when I look at things like Family Guy Online, it's a cool, fun game. It's funny. It's a good MMO. It's one of these lighter MMOs that brings in lots of other people. But as people play this, they still expect all of the core functionality of an MMO. So just think about team size and complexity of build. Yep, it was Unity, and I know they knocked off the demo that got them the deal in a period of a few weeks, which is awesome. But, if you think about it, all of these guys who are studying game design, who know how to use Unity, the games that use Unity and the games that hit core market are going to get bigger and more complex. And as that happens, the field will winnow, and you'll have consolidation in the industry. You'll have bigger teams. Maybe we don't go back, or not even go back because they still exist, but maybe everything doesn't trend towards the 200-person AAA title, and you've got this spot of 20-person to 50-person mid-core teams. That's fine. That's great. That's awesome. There'll still be the one-person show and things like that, but I don't think it's going to be as flooded as you fear.
He's got a follow-up here, and this is really interesting because I actually see exactly where his fear is coming from because I saw this in the television industry. He says, also, indie gaming has been high on the rise. I fear that we may be reaching the saturation point there as well. So with tools like Unity, he says, I fear it'll mirror the issue graphic artists have with everybody with GIMP, Photoshop, and Instagram, thinking they are professional graphic artists and charging increasingly lower and lower for contract work and basically disservicing the community. Do you think this is an issue? And like I said, this we saw this happen in television with editors over the years when Final Cut Pro kind of came on the scene. We saw the exact same thing happen before that. Right. Everybody was on Avid, and it took a long time to learn these tools and things like that. And when the tools became easier to use, there became, instead of 2 people behind you for a job, there was now 20 people behind you for a job, and they were willing to take $1,000 less a week. So are you seeing the same thing happen in the gaming space with these tools?
Not necessarily, because the thing that I think you can say television bore out is just because you can use the tool. Like, I'm pretty good with software. I can use Adobe Premiere. I can use Final Cut. I can't edit a movie. I can't edit a reality show, right? I don't know how to tell a story through images. I don't have any of the skills you do.
I agree with that, but I will say that the industry for a while was a little clouded by this, and a lot of companies did hire people thinking that this is going to work, but it took them 6 months or a year, and they went, this isn't really working. We need to hire the veterans back who know what they're doing, because we're spending more money spinning our wheels with these kids who don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. So you're going to see some of that, right? So you will see, and this happens every time. I mean, for the longest time, I had copies of Photoshop. Now, there's no reason I should own a copy of Photoshop. I'm not that good. So finally, I don't know, 2 or 3 reps ago, I became honest, and I got Photoshop Elements, because that's the limit of my skill.
That's your level.
Right, that's what I can do. So I think, what you're going to see is things like Unity. Look, you still need to be able to code. You still need to be able to script. Yes, you can learn how to rig things, but what we're actually seeing in a lot of the college programs and that is people are coming to the realization that, hey, not everybody's a good programmer, not everybody's a good artist, but that may mean that because they understand coding and art, they might make a good associate producer, or they might be a great community lead and things like that. So as in an industry, when you get professionalization, you've got this combination thing of, yep, there's a flood of people because it's easy, and I'm expecting a huge flood in the industry just because so many different game programs are being started up around the country. And every one of these you look at, the class size is a pyramid. So, the seniors, there's 20 people in the class. The freshmen, there's 200 people in the class. So, as that happens, so over the next 4 or 5 years, we have a huge influx of people coming in, and the industry will grow to absorb it. The industry is growing double-digit year over year, so it'll absorb a lot of people. You'll see expansion into areas like serious games, simulations, gamification, other things that are sort of tangential to entertainment games, but use the same skill set. All of those sorts of things will start to happen, and yeah, you'll have the Unity posers of, hey, I went through the tutorial, give me a job. But in all honesty, in a real environment, they won't last.
Last up, John asked about, he says he'd like to ask about trying how to advertise an indie game on an indie budget. So what are some ways that they can get noticed in an increasingly flooded market without breaking the bank?
Yeah, so, what you end up with is PR at that point. And whether your PR is social media, things like that, or you go after, excuse me, you go after traditional media. One example I'll use is there's a Boston company called Alchemy Labs, and they did this game called Smug Truck. Now, this is a tilt-based, your truck's going along, and it hit bounces and things fall out, and you've got to try and balance it to keep everything in your truck. Well, they put it out as Smuggle Truck, and you're smuggling illegal aliens across the border. Much hue and cry. Newspaper articles were written. Radio guys got on there complaining about, what a stupid thing this is, blah, blah, blah. End of story. They reskinned it in remarkably fast time into Snuggle Truck, where you're carrying stuffed animals. And they had huge take-up. So, PR stunts, things like that is a great way to do it. If you're doing an indie game, you have to be unique. There's got to be an angle. There's got to be something about what you're doing that's really, different, deeper, broader than what the traditional clones are in the industry. So when you do that, you got to make it cool, something different, and get that message out. Be controversial, get out on social media, show up at every local event and talk about your game, show up every chance somebody gives you a chance to show your game. All of those things matter. It gets you some of that traction. And the amazing thing is, if you're on a mobile store, if you're even getting some traction and they're noticing your game's getting picked up and played regularly, that's when you get a chance of, they look at it and they say, hey, let's make this a featured game, let's pop this up, and that gets you out there. If what you've done is, a really good game that's much like lots of other games out there, and there's nothing unique about it, there's nothing you can really push, talk to your mom, get her to call her friends, and see where that gets you.
Come up with something. With something. Monty Sharma, Managing Director of Mass Digi, thanks so much for being on the show again and answering everybody's questions. You can follow Monty, of course, on the Twitter at Monster, MONTSTER27. I'm sure you got to... I don't even want to ask what you're doing there. Probably super secret, top secret stuff you can't even talk about.
Exactly. I'm hanging with the guys, and actually my background and part of what we're talking about here is core technology for games. So we're working on that problem.
If you guys have a question for Monty, make sure to email Monty. It's monty@gamebreaker.tv. Send in your questions to monty@gamebreaker.tv, and he will answer them right here on the show. For all your video game news, keep it locked and dialed in right here to gamebreaker.tv, and we will see you next week for more Monty's Minute. Have a great week, guys.